Well, I'm joined now by Labour's Tom Harris, and in London is the Liberal Democrats' Jo Swinson. Well, Tom Harris, as your party fought the election in favour of this AV system, you presumably think it's a brilliant idea?
No, we didn't fight the election in support of AV. We fought the election with a manifesto commitment to having a referendum, with it being made quite clear that MPs, even ministers, if we had won the election, would be able to campaign for a no vote. So I didn't even vote for it in the Commons when we had the opportunity. I've always been a strong supporter of first past the post, and I'll be campaigning energetically for a no vote whenever the referendum is held.
Now, just to be clear, as I understand it, there was some sort of meeting tonight, was there, or clarification issue tonight, that Labour is now officially against the bill, not necessarily against the EV, but against the bill?
There are no circumstances in which Labour could support the bill. I mean, the bill has a number of things in it. One is the arbitrary reduction in the number of seats. It's the disenfranchising of 3.5 million people who won't have a chance to get onto the electoral register before these new seats are drawn up. It abolishes local inquiries. So much for the new localism that David Cameron and Nick Clegg espoused before the election. So there's also a range of things in it that we're opposed to. So the referendum is part of that, but it's not the main part.
All right, now, Jo Swinson, presumably given your party campaigned in the election, on the basis you were against AV because you were in favour of proportional representation, you think this is a rubbish idea?
Well, before the election, we voted for AV in the Commons, that vote that Tom voted against, because it's definitely progress on the current system that we have now. It means that voters get the chance to order their ballot paper in order of preference, which is giving more power to the individual voters. And it means that whoever is elected will actually have the support of at least half of the people in their constituency. Now, those are big steps forward, and that's why I'll be campaigning for a yes vote next May. Right,
but I mean, Labour have now said they'll be against the bill, and if a lot of, never mind a majority of Labour MPs take Tom Harris's view and campaign against it, there are certainly going to be a lot of Tories, possibly including the Cabinet, campaigning against it. It's quite liable you could lose this referendum.
Well, the debate is there to be had in the country, and I believe we can win it. There are a range of views in the Labour Party and in the Conservative Party. The Liberal Democrats are pretty set on knowing that we want fairer votes. But as I say, there are amongst other parties a range of views. But also I think out there in the public at large, there is actually an appetite to get away from this first past the post system, which has produced so many bizarre results. And
you surely must have some concern that if come next May you lost this referendum, I mean, what are you going to say to your activists and your constituency who are going to say to you, look, the only possible reason we can think of getting involved in this coalition government was to get voting reform, and we've got 4 years of this government to go and we've not got it. All we're going to do is cut public spending.
Well, to start, I think we can win the referendum, and I'll be campaigning hard to do so. But there's much, much more in terms of Liberal Democrat policy within this government. We're raising, and already have raised, from next April, the tax threshold to take some of the lowest paid people out of paying income tax. There's a wide range of political reforms that are on the cards, not just this, but the right of recall for MPs who have been found guilty of wrongdoing, reform to the House of Lords, which Labour promised for so many years and didn't deliver. A whole range of different
shopping lists, Ed. What do you think they'll win the referendum?
My guess is they probably won't win the referendum. I think they'll get the bill through, and I don't know if they're going to go to the wall on the date. What's interesting about the date, coinciding with the Scottish elections, is that Scottish Liberal Democrats in Holyrood and Scottish Liberal Democrat MPs, including Jo Swinson, supported the Scottish Parliament when it decided to push back the local elections a year, because the last time in 2007 when we held local elections on the same day as the Scottish Parliament elections, there was a huge amount of confusion, and there was cross-party consensus which included the Scottish Liberal Democrats for pushing the council elections back. And here we are 4 years later, and we are after all going to have 2 elections on the same day thanks to the Liberal Democrats.
Well, what about that issue, Jo Swinson? It's not really about the merits of the issue. I mean, Nick Clegg today was saying there's no reason people in Scotland can't make up their mind and do things simultaneously. It's this respect business, isn't it? Given that most MSPs appear to be against having two votes on the same day, surely, as a respectful UK government, your allies and colleagues should say, well, that's fine.
Well, of course, we've just had a general election which was held on the same day for many people across the UK as local elections. So the Electoral Commission is right to say that there are risks when you hold two different elections on the same day, but those can indeed be managed. And of course, people in Scotland will be perfectly able to make up their mind on both these things on the same day. And of course, it also means that they won't have the inconvenience of going out to vote twice. Now, Tom and myself and many of the people watching this programme might be heavily interested in politics and live, sleep and breathe it. But for many people, actually, I think the added convenience of not having to go out on another occasion to vote is something which is actually helpful, plus the fact it saves £17 million, which in the current circumstances I think is certainly another consideration.
You know, everything you've just said may be completely wise and sagacious, but it's actually irrelevant to the question I asked you. What I said to you was that it's an issue of respect. If most MSPs do not want these two votes to be held on the same day, and if your government has an agenda of respect towards the Scottish Parliament, then irrespective of what you've just said, isn't it respectful to say, well, if you don't want to have these two polls on the same days, that's fine?
Well, certainly my colleague, the Secretary of State for Scotland, has been in discussions with MSPs on this issue. I think it's right that this bill is first presented to the House of Commons because that's where the legislation will be made, and this is ultimately a decision for the House of Commons. But certainly there's been discussions with the Scottish Government about the possibility, and certainly when the general election and the Scottish elections may clash in 2015, at the possibility of moving the date of the Scottish elections to accommodate. But I really don't think there is going to be a massive problem in having this very simple yes/no question on the same day as the Scottish parliamentary elections. And I certainly want to, reassure those that are concerned about that, it absolutely can be done. The Electoral Commission has said that it can be done, and I think if you ask most people in Scotland, they would accept they can make those decisions on the same day.
Crocodile Deer's on your part, isn't it? If it had been Gordon Brown's government with this issue, it just said, oh, of course we'll have two polls on the same day, don't care what the Scottish Parliament thinks.
I think Gordon, whatever you say about Gordon, he's far more in touch with the Scottish political world, and I don't think he would have made the mistake of trying to have it on the same day. But, Joe talked about saving £17 million by having it the same day. I've got a better idea. Let's save a hell of a lot more than £17 million and let's not have the referendum at all.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you. All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you both very much indeed. Now,